Right, so we're in the McDonald's drive-through queue. I'm actually really quite exhausted. See, yesterday, right, I was doing all those videos, right, and kind of like it seemed a good idea at the time. Kind of just losing the plot and just going crazy and just like doing whatever comes to mind, and singing and shouting and dancing and whatever else, But I mean, it's better than it keeps the spirit. We'll keep the spirit alive, as Frank McDonald, as Michael McDonald once said. Right. So what will we talk about today? Because there's a lot to talk about. Oh yes, dear diary, dear journal, dear. Because I'm one of the top. You should ken this by now, but I'm one of the top local amateurs in the fucking region. Maybe even in the region. Like, not for my age, actually, literally, because I don't think there'll be many people that could take me on over 200 miles, Maybe not quite at this stage of the game, because I've let the big miles go a little bit. I've let the conditioning go down a little bit with the big miles, so it's not like I could, like, if someone was to say, right, tomorrow do that 200-mile loop, I wouldn't fly around it, but I would certainly do a respectable time. Because what you have to do with the long distances, right, you have to keep up if you were trying to do a good speed for average speed and a good time and everything for 200 miles, you would have to be doing, at least a long bike run, at least one per week. And by long, I mean like 100 miles or over, to keep the conditioning there, keep the endurance there, maybe that would probably be enough, What I did when I just kind of fell into the 200-mile cycle runs, right? I fell into it, but I kind of morphed into, I just kind of went with the flow, and I was getting excited about doing the long distances. So what I did was the kind of winter leading up to last year, because last year was when I did all those long distance ones, right? Crazy long distance ones, right? I used the winter just naturally, organically, authentically, as they say, to kind of like gradually get into building up the distance. And I would do these ridiculous, and what you find is when you do these ridiculous long bike rides in the winter, this is what I was alluding to yesterday with like, this isn't a fucking joke, this shit. When you do it in the bad conditions, well, there's no such thing as bad conditions, just bad clothing, blah blah blah, but you know what I mean, when you do it in the conditions that are, shall we say, not exactly as favourable and thrilling and exciting and fun and whatever as a lovely summer ride with beautifully still conditions and the hot sun beating down on your back and all that, when you're doing it in tough conditions, shall we say, wet, windy, cold, it really does toughen you up. It really does acclimatise you and condition you. So that's why when I got to the kind of spring of 2021, that's when I was like, well, I'd built up to kind of 150 miles at a reasonable pace, and I was like, right, let's go and do this. And then I just built it up and did these long distances, and it just felt so, like when I was doing that video the other day, 3 or 4 days ago, it takes a lot of energy doing all this stuff. And I was up late, I just kind of go with the flow with all this stuff, and I was making a video about, the analogy between, being a heroin addict and being an exercise junkie, which is basically the same thing, because as I've said about, before, you are kind of like addicted to the endogenous opioids and endorphins that are released, which are very akin to those that are released during shall we say, a heroin addict's session where they're injecting and all that kind of thing. It's the same thing, but I'm doing it naturally, not obviously getting the release of those chemicals to the same degree, but obviously it's still the same thrill, still the same high, still the same mechanism at work, really, and all that. So it's quite interesting to have explored, in a small way, that parallel between those two things, the exercise and actually being a heroin addict. But it's amazing, and I came up with that poetry without even thinking about it, didn't I? I came up with a few lines, it's quite cool, Like just to kind of like express it and let it go into the black hole of the internet, But anyway, I don't want to be going into a black hole. No, I want to be doing quite well. So as I was exploring, see, this is what I mean about like doing all this stuff, right? So when you explore this stuff kind of creatively, like a wee child, making videos, talking, singing, doing whatever, doing your wee creative exploits, what you actually discover is doesn't it really matter so much whether folk watch it. What it's actually good for, in a sense, it's actually good in the sense that if you do it, if you explore all this stuff, it actually is good for, it's kind of like what the psychologists would probably say about getting out your feelings and verbalizing and communicating things out loud. It like poetry is better read out loud, and it takes on a whole new life. It's the same with this stuff. See, with me coming to terms with certain things, like the kind of aging retiring athlete, like the Ronnie O'Sullivan thing, that he was alluding to in that interview. Very illuminating, that interview with Hazel and him. I thought I could relate to what he was talking about. Obviously, I'm not on the same level as him as a sportsman, but I can definitely relate to that. But in terms of all that, you verbalizing it and letting it out, and being creative in it is really good for you to come to terms with. Get a different fix on things, and the fix I got on things in terms of how do I kind of not retire gracefully, but kind of like just accept that maybe the burnout, feeling flat, feeling like accepting things, so that I could still enjoy a good winter's training and still get something out of it and still do well, because I'm not fucking doing these 200-mile bike rides if I'm not going to be doing it faster than I was before. I'm sorry, but the attraction's not going to be there because it takes up too much time. But you know what I mean. But anyway, in terms of Langham tomorrow, like this year, if we just have a wee glance at this year was not doing the 200-milers. I was doing more of the 70-milers and I did the odd cool thing. I did the odd cool thing, but you never know. It's just going with the flow, and I might find a resurgence and a renaissance or something like that, this winter. And actually tomorrow I've got a good feeling about tomorrow, because I've had a good wee rest, right? And hopefully I can, it's been feeling a bit flat for a while now, but hopefully tomorrow, because it's going to be dry, maybe that's part of it, the weather and everything, but why I've felt flat. But tomorrow, hopefully, because it's dry, I do want to do the Langham Loop, and I don't think it's out of the bounds of possibility that I could do a PB on that climb tomorrow, but it might be quite difficult, because they do say, because the kind of depression, who isn't depressed at this time of the year to a certain extent? You kind of feel the kind of, the flatness, because when you're depressed, the kind of feel-good chemicals they're the same, are they? And you feel pain. That's technically what happens with your whole system. It feels pain more when you're depressed, just because of the way that the chemicals are all kind of being, that your system is kind of it's not recalibrated, whatever the word is. It's kind of it's not really quite. You're going through the seasons, aren't you? So you're not going to feel like top notch, wow, excited, thrilling, wow. So that's just natural. That's that's going with the seasons, as Ronnie would say. You feel flat. So hopefully tomorrow, as we're just about to get to the, and that's a good wee thing. That's number one there, right? So hopefully I can be my number one, as I said yesterday, and hopefully do better and have a good run tomorrow, a good creative. It's just so creative, yes. It's just so creative and exciting, and spiritual, and fortifying, and energizing, and inspiring, and everything. These bike rides, when they go well, so it's just all about the right approach, how to. It's just about just take on board what Ronnie said yesterday. You know what I mean, Dave? And that's what it is. I take on board what Ronnie said and just use all that, and acclimatise a little bit and recalibrate and just kind of assimilate everything that he said and just come up with something cool and have a good bike ride tomorrow. Can't we? Right,